in the spring of 1900, a group of Greek sponge divers sheltering from a storm near a small island between Crete and the Peloponnese made a decision that would alter the trajectory of modern archaeology. One of them, Elias Stadiatis, descended roughly 40 meters into the water, searching for sponge beds. What he found instead was a field of corroded human limbs, green, encrusted arms reaching from the sediment, half-buried faces staring into the dark water. He surfaced in a panic, convinced he had stumbled upon a graveyard. In a sense he had, but the dead belonged to a world far older and stranger than anyone on that boat could have imagined. Beneath them lay the wreck of a Roman-era cargo vessel, loaded with bronze and marble statues, jewelry, coins, glassware, and one corroded lump of bronze gears that for the better part of a century nobody understood. That lump would eventually be identified as the Antikythera mechanism, the oldest known analog computer on Earth, a device capable of predicting eclipses, tracking planetary motion, and modeling the cycles of the ancient Greek calendar with a precision that should not have existed in the 1st century before the Common Era. The seafloor, it turns out, has a habit of holding things that do not match the story we think we already know. And over the past 125 years, what has been pulled from beneath the ocean, or merely glimpsed there through the cameras of submersibles and remotely operated vehicles, has again and again forced wholesale revision of our understanding of ancient navigation, biology, geology, and even the boundaries of life itself. Consider the sheer improbability of the Antikythera mechanism's survival. The ship carrying it went down sometime around 65 BCE, likely caught in a storm while transporting luxury goods, perhaps looted Greek art destined for wealthy Roman collectors. The vessel shattered on the rocks and sank into a submarine cliff. For 2,000 years, the mechanism lay among amphorae and statuary, slowly mineralizing, its delicate bronze gears fusing together. When it was recovered in 1901, the corroded mass was set aside. It looked like nothing. It took decades before radiologist examinations and later X-ray tomography revealed the extraordinary truth. Inside was a system of at least 30 interlocking gears, including a differential gear mechanism that Western engineering would not redevelop for another 1,500 years. The device could model the irregular orbit of the moon, predict solar and lunar eclipses, and track the timing of the ancient Olympic Games. In a single artifact, resting forgotten on the seafloor, lay evidence that the ancient Greeks had achieved a level of mechanical sophistication that challenged the entire conventional timeline of technological progress. Yet the Antikythera mechanism, extraordinary as it is, represents just one category of seafloor revelation, the kind in which a human-made object defies expectation. There are others, and they are no less profound. In June of 2024, the Israel Antiquities Authority announced the discovery of the oldest known deep-sea shipwreck in the world. A London-based energy company called Energene had been surveying the Mediterranean seafloor with remotely operated vehicles when its cameras captured something unmistakable. Hundreds of intact storage jars, Canaanite amphorae, resting in neat clusters nearly 6,000 feet below the surface, approximately 56 miles off the coast of Israel. The vessel that carried them sank sometime between 1400 and 1300 BCE during the Late Bronze Age, making it roughly 3,300 years old. The depth alone was staggering. At nearly a mile beneath the surface, the wreck sat in a realm of perpetual darkness, far below the reach of any ancient or even most modern diving technology. But the more significant revelation was geographical. The ship had gone down far from any coastline, far enough that no land would have been visible from the deck in any direction. Only the horizon. This single fact dismantled a long-held assumption about Bronze Age navigation, that ancient mariners hugged the coast, always keeping land in sight, navigating by headlands and harbors. The Canaanite wreck proved that at least some sailors, more than 3 millennia ago, were navigating open water using celestial methods, reading the stars and the sun with enough confidence to cross deep stretches of open sea, carrying heavy commercial cargo. Jacob Sharvit, head of maritime archaeology for the IAA, noted that the cargo appeared largely undisturbed, suggesting the ship sank quickly. There were no signs that the crew had tried to jettison weight to stay afloat, which would typically indicate a slow emergency. Whatever happened, storm, structural failure, something else, it happened fast. The cold, still conditions at that depth preserved the amphorae almost perfectly. 2 were carefully retrieved by robotic arms during a subsequent recovery mission, rising through nearly 2 kilometers of dark water to reach the surface for the first time since the Bronze Age. The find was especially significant because only 2 other Bronze Age cargo shipwrecks had ever been found in the Mediterranean. the Uluburun and Cape Gelidonia wrecks, both off the Turkish coast and both substantially younger. This new discovery did not simply add to the list. It redrew the map of ancient trade itself, suggesting that open sea routes across the eastern Mediterranean may have been far more common in the Bronze Age than scholars had assumed. This pattern, the seafloor preserving what land and time have erased, recurs across very different domains of discovery. Not far from where the Canaanite ship was found, another body of water has proven to be an even more extraordinary archive. The Black Sea, due to a geological quirk, contains a vast layer of anoxic water beginning at relatively shallow depths, water with so little dissolved oxygen that the bacteria and organisms responsible for decomposing wood and organic material simply cannot survive there. The result is a kind of natural museum. Ships that sank into the Black Sea centuries or millennia ago remain intact in a way that defies normal expectations of decay. An ancient Greek trading vessel dating to around 400 BCE was found there with its mast still standing upright, its hull almost entirely complete. It matched almost exactly the type of ship painted on ancient Greek pottery, a design that scholars had studied in 2 dimensions for centuries but never expected to see preserved in 3. The Black Sea Maritime Archaeology Project, which catalogued over 60 wrecks spanning more than 2,000 years of seafaring history, revealed vessels from the Byzantine, Ottoman, and medieval periods. Many in conditions that looked almost as if they had sunk recently. These ships carried with them not just cargo but evidence of rigging techniques, hull construction methods, and naval architecture that had never survived on land. The seafloor in this case was not merely a grave, it was a library, but the revelations waiting on the ocean bottom extend well beyond human artifacts. In February of 1977, a team of geologists aboard the research submersible Alvin descended to the Galapagos Rift, a volcanic spreading zone on the Pacific Ocean floor nearly 8,000 feet below the surface. They expected to find hydrothermal vents, fissures where superheated, mineral-rich water erupts from the Earth's crust into the frigid deep. They found them. What they did not expect to find was life. Not microbial life, not sparse colonies of hardy bacteria, but dense, thriving ecosystems, giant tube worms over 6 feet long with vivid red plumes, clustered around the vents in thick forests. Enormous clams, ghostly white crabs, an entire food web that had no connection to sunlight whatsoever. This was at the time genuinely shocking. The prevailing model of life on Earth depended on photosynthesis, on the sun as the fundamental energy source for all biology. The vent ecosystems operated on a completely different principle, chemosynthesis. Bacteria at the base of the food chain harvested energy not from light, but from the chemical reactions between hydrogen sulfide and the minerals in the superheated water. Everything else, the worms, the clams, the crabs, fed on those bacteria or on organisms that did. It was an entirely self-contained biosphere powered by the Earth's own heat, thriving in total darkness under crushing pressure. The discovery did not merely add a new chapter to marine biology. It forced a fundamental revision of the conditions considered necessary for life, with implications that radiated outward into astrobiology, planetary science, and the search for life on ocean worlds like Jupiter's moon Europa and Saturn's moon Enceladus. And in October of 2024, the story deepened further still. A team using a remotely operated vehicle at the East Pacific Rise lifted sections of lobate lava shelving near hydrothermal vents and discovered communities of giant tube worms, snails, and marine worms living not around the vents, but beneath the sea floor itself in volcanic cavities and crevices hidden under the ocean bottom. This was not life at the edge of the known world, it was life beneath the edge in an underworld that no one had thought to look for. The finding, published in Nature Communications, revealed that the deep-sea ecosystems around vents are far more extensive and interconnected than previously understood, with larval organisms migrating through cracks in the Earth's crust to colonize hidden chambers below. Then there are the cities. In the year 2000, French underwater archaeologist Franck Goddio and his team located the remains of Thonis-Heracleion, an ancient Egyptian port city, beneath the waters of Abukir Bay, roughly 4 miles off the modern Egyptian coast. The city had been one of the most important harbors in the Mediterranean world, a gateway to Egypt, mentioned in ancient texts, visited, according to legend, by Helen of Troy. And then, sometime around the 8th century, it vanished. Earthquakes and rising waters conspired to submerge it. For more than 1,000 years, Thonis-Heracleion existed only as a name in old manuscripts, doubted by some scholars as possibly mythological. Goddio's discovery silenced that doubt. Beneath the sediment lay colossal statues of pharaohs and gods, the foundations of temples, dozens of shipwrecks in the ancient harbor, gold coins, bronze ceremonial instruments, and inscribed steels that confirmed the city's dual Greek and Egyptian name. As of the most recent estimates, only about 5% of the site has been excavated. The rest remains buried under the seafloor, waiting. A similar story belongs to Pavlopetri, off the southern coast of Greece's Peloponnese Peninsula, first identified by archaeologist Nicholas Fleming in 1967. Submerged beneath just a few meters of water lie the intact foundations of buildings, streets, courtyards, and tombs dating back more than 5,000 years to the early Bronze Age and possibly earlier into the late Neolithic. It is the oldest known submerged city in the world, and its layout is so well preserved that researchers have been able to map its urban plan in detail, revealing a sophisticated settlement with evidence of organized communal space, trade activity, and social structure that predates the great palaces of Minoan Crete. There is a common thread running through all of these discoveries, from a corroded lump of gears off a Greek island to tube worms thriving in volcanic caves a mile below the Pacific. The seafloor is not an emptiness. It is not a void where things are simply lost. It is a preserving medium, cold, dark, pressurized, often chemically inhospitable to the forces of decay, and it holds, with extraordinary fidelity, the evidence of worlds we had either forgotten or never knew existed. The ocean covers more than 70% of the Earth's surface. By most credible estimates, more than 80% of it remains unmapped and unexplored to any meaningful degree. The technology required to survey and access the deep sea has only existed for a few decades and remains expensive, scarce, and logistically difficult to deploy. What this means practically is that the discoveries made so far, the ones that have already rewritten timelines, challenged assumptions about ancient capability, revealed unknown biological kingdoms, and resurrected drowned civilizations, are almost certainly a small fraction of what lies below. The 3,300-year-old Canaanite ship was found not by archaeologists but by an energy company performing a routine seafloor survey. The Antikythera mechanism was found by sponge divers hiding from weather. The hydrothermal vent ecosystems were found by geologists who were not looking for life at all. Discovery in the deep ocean has been largely incidental, a byproduct of other activities, made possible by technologies designed for other purposes. There is a quiet enormity to this. The seafloor does not advertise what it holds. It does not signal. It simply waits in darkness and silence at pressures that would crush a human body, in temperatures near freezing or near the vents hot enough to melt lead. And when we finally send something down, a camera, a submersible, a pair of robotic arms on a tether, what comes back tends to be more than anyone expected, not because the ocean is supernatural or mysterious in any mystical sense, but because our assumptions about what should be down there have been historically far too modest. We assumed Bronze Age sailors stayed near shore. We assumed life required sunlight. We assumed certain cities were legends. We assumed technological sophistication followed a neat linear progression through history. The seafloor has not been kind to those assumptions, and the most grounded, unsensational conclusion available is also, perhaps, the most striking, that the majority of the ocean floor remains unseen, and that every significant effort to look has returned with something that forced a revision of what we thought we knew. The record so far gives no reason to believe that pattern is finished. The seafloor is still holding things we have not yet thought to look for in places we have not yet been able to reach, preserving evidence of events and processes and lives that above the waterline have long since been erased. What rests down there is not mystery for its own sake. It is simply the unexamined part of the record, vast, patient, and so far, consistently more than anyone expected.